Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Kerrville Weekly News for June 29, 2024. Yes, this will be our last edition for the first half of 2024, and next week will be the second half of 2024. Think about that. How many shopping days do you have left until Christmas? We begin this week's news on a bittersweet note as we mourn the passing of legendary Kinky Friedman. He lived in a ranch off of Bandera, and he was just an icon and fixture of the Texas music scene, literally from the 1970s up until this year. He is someone that almost all of us had seen or heard, and he lived as full a life as one can. He ran for governor. He had a bar in New York City. His original band was the Kinky Friedman and the Texas Jew Boys. He thumbed his nose and his thumb at the powers that be his entire time. So hats off to a life fully lived and well lived. Kinky Friedman, you will definitely be missed. Our next story comes to us from the Kerrville Daily Times, which reports that KPUB is looking to generate its own electricity. If state bureaucracies cooperate, KPUB could begin generating electricity as early as 2027. The price tag is around $150 million for a gas-fired plant like the one that KPUB is envisioning. It is obviously something that's very expensive, and KPUB would not necessarily be the sole owner, but it's embarking on a public information campaign and effort to make sure its plan aligns with what its customers want. We've talked about this previously on prior episodes of the Kerrville Weekly News, and KPUB basically wants to own the rights or own the ability to generate its own electricity instead of having to purchase it from San Antonio or another location. Kerrville Independent School District has named Linda Guzman as the new principal for Nimitz Elementary. She joins KISD from the Northside ISD, where she was most recently an elementary associate principal. Brent Ringo announced, or rather said in a statement, they're very excited to welcome her to the KISD family. I'm not sure how to characterize this, but an indictment has been brought against former Uvalde school police chief and one of his assistants for their delay in responding to the tragedy at Robb Elementary in Uvalde, where he failed to identify an active shooter and did not follow training and made tactical decisions, which slowed law enforcement's response down to literally an hour before they breached the classroom where the shooter was and killed the shooter. But how many more children died because of their actions? Well, now they're going to be called to account in a criminal sanction for endangerment of children. This is the first and only set of criminal charges in the Uvalde school district massacre, or school shooting rather, and it's probably time that someone was held to account for this horrible tragedy. We are coming up on the 4th of July, and the city of Kerrville, of course, is having its 4th of July celebration at Louise Hayes Park. So I hope you will consider coming down and seeing some great music and some great fellowship and lots of Gilberts at the park. I hope you have a very safe and happy 4th of July. I hope you think a few moments about what the 4th of July means to this country and the Declaration of Independence and the courage it took for the men who not only signed or drafted but signed that document, and those who then fought for our freedom in the Revolutionary War of Independence. This is Tom Fox again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Kerrville Weekly News. The Kerrville Weekly News is a production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network, which recently won 3 Communicator Awards. An award was won by the Texas Hill Country Artist Podcast, From Last to First, the John Assetti Story, and It's Art, Let's Talk About It, the podcast by the Museum of Western Art in Kerrville, produced by the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network, also won an award. If you'd like to find out more information about the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network, please contact us. We'd love to talk to you. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to visiting with you again. This is Tom Fox. Thank you so much for listening to the inaugural episode of the Kerrville Weekly News Roundup. This podcast is a special production of the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network. We now have 10 podcasts on the network, so I hope you will check out the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network and listen, rate, and review to some or all of the podcasts. We are the only podcast network in the Hill Country, and we're bringing a wide variety of topics to you for your entertainment and enjoyment. If you've got a podcast or you'd like to consider starting a podcast, please give us a shout. There's a link to contact us on the Texas Hill Country Podcast Network, or you can email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. This is Tom Fox. Thank you so much for listening to this episode.